Hello and welcome once again to Indiepocalypse Radio, your source for all things related to, some things related to, tangentially things related to Indiepocalypse, the ongoing monthly indie game anthology thing. I've been shedding the word indie more often. For having it in the title, I'm going with alternative for at least the present time, because when dealing in the independent space, one must always run from buzzword to buzzword in the hopes that eventually you can extract a little value you can out of something before people with a lot of money decide, well, I am also alternative. But speaking of developers, alternative, indie, all these sorts of things, all these arbitrary kind of phrases that we use to describe things that are kind of. I like hobbyist. I think hobbyist is a very good term, but I think it has at least in the West, or at least especially in America, has kind of a negative connotation with it, despite I think it being a very good descriptor. But speaking of, we have a couple of hobbyist developers with me today. You may know these first guests from issue 35 of Indiepocalypse with Children of the Flower. Is Jeremy and Sarah of Wombat Games. Hello.
Hello. Good to be here.
Good to have you here. I've done everything. I've put out all my live announcements. Discord said, "Are you sure you want to?" Everybody, like a billion people. I'm like, yeah, of course I do. Why do I have a server if I don't use it as a secondary newsletter, basically? But anyway.
Oh my god, there are billions listening?
What was that?
Are there billions listening?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay, great.
Probably closer to 5.
I can stop sweating.
Yeah, no, there is but of course the aftermarket, the non-live, the archive version. There's clearly, I don't check the data on that, so there's surely billions there.
Eventually we'll hit a billion, in a couple years.
Right. That's the goal of everyone, is to have 1 billion sets of eyes on you at all times, watching, scrutinizing your every movement.
That's definitely why we went into this.
Yeah, right. To be like, oh no, I have to contemplate my every word, my every phrase, my every tiny action, because what if it? But speaking of tiny phrases, tiny actions, and putting yourself out into the world. Oh no, that's not the pivot I wanted. But I'll say, let's just get to the point. How did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
Sarah?
Yeah. So I think I was just browsing the itch.io jams because I was looking for a new jam to do, and then I saw Indiepocalypse. Your post for submissions for issue 35, and I was like, oh, I don't have to create a new thing. I could just submit what we already have. That's great.
Yeah, that's.
So and honestly was really surprised when we got the email, although I only found out I think 2 days before the deadline, because I was randomly looking through my spam inbox, and it was there.
I need to get better about sending follow-ups, because I've literally contacted someone and their reply to me went to spam.
Oh gosh.
So
yeah.
Spam filters are really weird sometimes. Like I send the same email to everybody, and I'm sure plenty of people all use Gmail, but it'll catch 1 or 2 of them will go to spam, and the rest of the people will be fine.
Yeah. Honestly, I was like, oh, thank goodness when I saw it, because I was like, if I left it for another week, it'd be too late. So
yeah, I would have told you at some point. I would have been like, hey, did you see this? I'm gonna kick you out. I'm gonna kick you out in 48 hours if you haven't.
Yeah, but it was so cool when I did see it. I ran around the house, and then I told Jeremy, and I was like, "Yay, such good news!"
Well, that's.
And then we had to design the poster page, or the page in a night as well.
Yeah. Well, for a night, it's a very good design of a page.
Oh, thank you.
I like it. There was people there were so many kind of different approaches to designs, and I like when people go with you went for the very magazine design aesthetic, and I'm a fan.
Yeah, we tried to capture that 90s Game Boy look,
Yeah.
like with the totally unrelated marketing scheme.
Yes,
Or somewhat related.
or that very much overstates what's happening.
Yes.
When Nintendo decided to go really hardcore with all of its marketing.
Yeah, they're like, listen, we American kids are really tough, so we need to appeal to
We need to make our games tough.
Yeah.
We need to appeal to the American toughness, the classic avenging spirit philosophy. But speaking of your really tough game, where you take down gods, tell us was the correct way of saying that, about Children of the Flower.
Hey, go ahead.
We kind of came up with it for the Game Boy Jam. We had a different idea actually that we were gonna do, which involved a band in a sewer. And you were like, it was gonna be like Stand By Me, and then the theme came out, and the theme was plants, and we realized we couldn't do that anymore. So we kind of brainstormed in a night. Oh, like what kind of ideas we like, and we sort of liked a sort of Pokemon style, like you start like in a small town, and we realized both of us grew up kind of Christian, and so I really liked telling stories about cults, and so we ended up. I don't know when the idea of the giant flower came up.
Yeah, I currently have like a list of all the different ideas we wrote down in our brainstorm. Like, we have a plant boy, coming of age, sentient plant trapped in a classroom, plant town. These are just like crazy ideas. And
I
then,
like this socially anxious wizard that's a gardener idea that we totally didn't use.
Yeah. I think what really sold the idea for us when we started thinking of like, what should we call the characters? And then we thought of the giant sunflower, and then we thought, oh, maybe a group called the Weeds.
Oh yeah, that's written down like in like big letters. The Weeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is sometimes, what you need is that kind of one little this ties the whole room together in your game, and any piece of art that is kind of like a unifying factor.
Oh my god, I think there's a bunch of ideas that I discarded that was like a plant nursery, plant grandma dying, reckoning with death, and for a while it was going to be a game set in a plant nursing home. And I think Sarah was like, let's kind of move away from that. But it ended up in the game with like the graveyard and elderflower.
Yeah, there's
and then and there's here it says sunflower cult, small town, high priestess sunflower. I think we're really getting onto that there.
Yeah, the core of it. This was also I like when this happens kind of by what's the word I'm looking for? By coincidence, or kind of by like nice happenstance, where this is your game was one of two games of top-down kind of adventure style games dealing with familial legacies and your parents. The other being NIM Sin Removal Service. So it's what's going on with people and their parents right now, and their familial legacies?
Not sure. But actually, yeah, like the whole parental thing. I think so. Eventually, with the term of workload, it was decided that Sarah would work on the art while I would like. We came up with like the basic plot together, but I would like write the game, and then she would program the game, and then I would do the music. But I remember I went away for like 3 days and wrote a draft of the game, and I remember the thing that was like always coming back to me was like it's all about that familial, that whole relationship between Cedar and Daisy.
Oh, I guess we should probably give a summary of the game.
Oh yeah, should we?
Yeah, I guess. You play as Daisy in this small flower town, I guess. And yeah, you are the daughter of this high priest called Cedar. And I guess due to the legacy of the town and like their cult, your Daisy is like planned to be the next high priest, but she doesn't want to be that. So she
And they all worship this giant sunflower called the
yes.
God Flower.
Yeah, yeah. And so she joins her friend Bean in their anarchist group called the Weeds and is like asked to do several tasks in order to take down this godflower.
Basically launch an assassination attempt on the God Flower. And so the core of the game I saw was like Cedar and Daisy, like father and daughter. Like, can these people connect? Even though you don't actually have to interact with Cedar at all to finish the game.
Oh, no. Don't worry that you're shattering the illusion of video games and like what is the what do you actually need to do to complete a video game in a lot of cases, which is that is I think that's one of the interesting sorts of things to think about, like how you like the speed run, for instance, of Children of Flower, Children of the Flower does not have probably a lot of the core of it because you're just going to moment to moment to moment, but there's like a trust that the player's going to want to explore the world.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Jeremy, you wrote so many optional dialogue options like you don't even have to read.
Like one of the most recent reviews is like there was too much weird dialogue. Like, I don't like how this dialogue goes in such a weird direction. But I found it really liberating actually because I'm a screenwriter and I've started to find writing movies very limiting because you have to like follow a very certain like structures, 3-act structures and stuff like that. Sorry, I have a bit of a cough, but I'm a bit sick.
No, it's fine. You're doing a very good job of catching it.
Thank you. I'm back. But I found like writing video games was really like freeing because like I didn't feel constrained to like all these things. I remember playing so many like LucasArts games as a kid, and sort of I like brought a lot of that sort of influence into like the way that I wrote all the weird dialogues and the weird like characters.
Yeah, because those, I mean, venture games especially. I remember when they first re-released that first Monkey Island. I spent probably like a good. I mean, I could look how long I played that game. But I spent like a good amount of time playing through that game slowly, talking to a bunch of people. But then there's also, because I was hot on achievements, I was like, what if I get all of them? And one of them is like...
then you really have to explore.
And then one of them is like beating the game in an hour, and you realize, oh yes, if you mainline this thing, you can beat it. It's like... It's a weird way of approaching games that doesn't exist in other mediums as strictly. Like it's very hard. It's hard to like fast forward to the important parts of a movie, and just only
speedrun a movie.
Yeah, although my parents do, like they times 2 movies sometimes.
Sometimes my dad will like watch a TV series in like he'll watch episode 1 and then episode 8 and then episode 2 and then episode 7.
Yeah, go like.
Go like inwards, like a weird, like sort of Ouroboros into the center.
Okay, that's just madness.
That's
just weird. We've just got some weird watching habits out there.
Yeah, I'm not
crazy.
I'm not gonna pretend to understand that one.
But, I mean, that's maybe why we came up so like with these ideas.
Right, right. Yeah, that is. But also kind of fascinating way to approach it, honestly.
Not recommended. As a screenwriter, don't do that.
No. You do not plan your writing around the idea that someone will watch your movie in the strangest sequence possible.
But it's interesting. I guess for games, you have to consider that. You have to consider the player doing like something that you don't expect.
Oh, yeah, doing like everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Or
like,
like trying to break your game.
yeah, right. Or like, yes, and or when things are open, like the sequence in which you approach doing something, like how do you feel about your character? Like, if I did this thing at hour 2 versus if I did this thing at hour 20, does it hit differently?
Mm.
With like, if I did this side quest after 30 story quests or whatever versus the 2 that it becomes available at.
Yeah.
I mean, our game is quite short, luckily.
Yes.
So you can do the 3 tasks out of order, I think. Although, oh no, you have to do the 3rd one in order, but you
Yeah.
can do the first 2 out of order.
Yeah.
Because that is also the benefit, folks, of Indiepocalypse is it doesn't take very long, which
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I think
We
is
love short games, yeah.
a bonus. It's nice to be able to be like, well, I want to play a game. It's not like, well, time to set aside 8 to 20 hours of my life. It's like,
Uh,
8 to 20 minutes. That's a lot more doable.
It's so much more achievable for people in our fast-paced, hyper-capitalist landscape.
Yes, right. Or where you're not succeeding enough that you have all that free time that comes with the true success of the true capitalist success story. Or
This is the games compilation for the true capitalists, like the Elons and
oh no,
the high flyers.
See, once you get too much of a capitalist, you go too far where you no longer have time because you have to whine to everybody that they're not being nice to you. They don't think you're funny enough.
Mm.
It is.
And you can't enjoy small mediums like video games because you're too concerned with self-image.
Right. The beautiful reminder that for all the money in the world, all people are still just people.
Mm.
And you can still be just a desperate loser reaching for attention. And billions can't.
Aren't we all that?
I like to think we all
Deep
are.
down.
I think
We hate him so much because we are him.
I think losers are a bit mean, but I think we're all looking for something. Maybe. What are you?
He wants the same thing as all of us. He wants to be loved, and he wants to be. Which coincidentally, I guess, like the game is also on some level. It's about like a god flower who wants to be loved,
Right.
and then a daughter who wants to be loved by her dad in a way that shows that she's seen by him, and that interaction with the dad character, he sort of mishears everything she says and sort of misappropriates and sort of just assumes what she wants and actually listening to her. I think that was really important for me, that it was sort of about like that aspect of religion, that when you're sort of in that, often you feel like what you want, you're not fully seen for who you are,
Yeah.
and fully loved for who you are, because you have to fit into a mold.
Yeah. It also fits into this thing that I think about sometimes, where being nice is not the same thing as being empathetic.
Yeah.
Because the dad is a very nice, but he's not. He does not pay attention. He's not listening. But he's very, very polite about it all.
Mm.
Oh yeah, he's lovely, but just
but being pleased.
Yeah.
Saying please and thank you is not the same thing as relating to somebody.
Mm.
Definitely.
But speaking of relating to somebody, we've got a couple questions here. Or no, wait, we have one question here.
Lovely.
The old. There is a second question that I put in ceremoniously.
Amazing.
The one that sometimes someone remembers to ask, sometimes they don't remember to ask, and I've decided, why don't I just put it in there all the time anyway, which is a question from Soul, which is, what is your favorite kind of rock?
Oh, I was listening to the podcast like yesterday on the bus back home, and I was like, should I prepare for this question?
Oh, you're doing prep work, getting ready.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect, but favorite type of rock. Jeremy, do you want to
Do you have one? I need to think of one.
Well, I was thinking, for some reason, granite. I don't know, very useful rock.
Is it useful? What's it used for?
Granite. I was like kitchen tables.
Yeah, that
Very functional in our modern day.
it's that
Yeah.
that stone you see on countertops. That's granite.
Yeah, granite. Yeah.
I don't
was
know
gonna
which one of us is saying it correctly, or if it's just an accent thing.
I think it might be an accent thing. I
Yeah.
feel like here down in Australia, it's granite.
Right. It's
I have no clue.
the old aluminium trick, as I say.
Aluminum.
Right. We just swapped over there. I was gonna say, for me, obsidian. But I don't really know what obsidian is used for. It's the coolest sounding one.
It's for making gates to the netherworld, I think. It's for looking cool.
We've done your research.
It's for looking cool and otherworldly, perhaps.
I don't know if is obsidian a real metal?
Yeah,
Is that
that's a rock. I don't
That's
know.
a metal.
real rock?
It's a real rock. It is naturally occurring volcanic glass.
Oh, that's cool.
Cool.
I used to love volcanoes as a kid. It's like that was like my special interest for a hot minute.
Right. Among children love large destructive forces beyond their
Yeah,
regular.
it's awe at nature.
Yeah. It's the appeal of dinosaurs. They're huge and powerful,
Actually-
but I will never see one.
Like I will hopefully never see live volcanic rock
Right.
in my life because I don't want to be that close.
And
Wait, Andrew, what's your favorite rock?
Historically, it is. I think I've called them railway rocks, or maybe that's the first time I called them that. They're nondescript. I don't have a favorite type, but I have a sense memory of the style of rock that is like good for throwing against things because it's meaningless. It is nondescript, and you chuck it at the bottom of bridge underpasses at graffiti. And
So you find them on like railways?
that's where, in my memory, where I found them walking along a railway in the woods.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And some of them were flat enough that you could skip them. But mostly they were primarily used for throwing at graffiti. Because you'd be like, I bet you can't hit that part of the graffiti. And
Nice.
yeah, that's their primary purpose. But speaking of primary purposes, the question form has a second primary purpose, and that is to answer Mochi's eternal question, which is, do you have a favorite Toho character?
Yeah, I also heard about this question too.
And you prepared, right? You downloaded all. You download all 18 of them, and
Sarah does her research.
I was like, oh crap, I gotta play it. No, I haven't actually played Toho before. I'm so sorry.
No, I had not until roughly 1 calendar week ago.
I only know the characters from like anime figures because as like a kid, I used to be like, want to like buy them, but I just couldn't afford them, and so I saw a lot of Toho characters there. But no, I haven't played the games.
No.
So you don't have a favorite character?
Yeah, unfortunately, the one in red.
Yes, the one in red. That's the main
yes.
one.
Yes.
I forgot her name, but it's something related to Reimu, something in that ballpark.
I trust you.
Yeah, but
Sarah's considering opening up Google Chrome right now to like Google.
Don't expose me.
no, I live. Yes, I'm correct. I think because the chat confirms that is I hit the nail on the Toho head.
Nice. Thank you.
The shrine.
To me, I literally don't know what Toho is.
Well, fortunately, Jeremy, we do not have time for a Toho history lesson, as I'm becoming as I slowly morph myself into a Toho scholar. But until I get bored and I meander off into some other dark alleyway and be like, well, what if I got into this a lot? What if I got into, I don't know. What if I got really into Giallo, for a good couple of months? I do have more entry points into that personally. But that all aside, one final question before we go. What's the last little hole that either of you, both of you even, fell into that you can remember?
Ooh, like media hole.
Yeah, like I want to try all of this sort of thing, or I want to go down this genre or this style, or
Oh my gosh, I actually thought you meant like an actual hole, and I was like,
What's the last hole that I was in?
open-ended,
When was I last
question.
physically in a big?
If you've gone spelunking recently and went down some holes,
Would never.
more than happy to hear about those as well.
Do you have one?
media hole. Ah,
Like, for the last 2 years, I've been in like a media hole of like art house film.
Okay.
Like since I got Criterion Channel, like that's my life.
So
Like,
so important question.
I think I'll never get out of this hole.
I'm getting close to falling back into that hole, but I gotta ask you, Jeremy, how do you feel with the Sight and the Sound poll?
Oh, I didn't even check it out. I saw all of the stuff on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not that interested. I know what I like.
Yeah.
I don't need to know what other people like, which is admittedly maybe like closed-minded, but it's like, famous people can like what they like. Famous people can vote Citizen Kane.
Yes. No, it was I want to write about it because I think it's my favorite. Well, besides loving the movie that was number one, I think it's the funniest number one possible because it's neither like what's the word I'm looking for? Canonically critically best one like Citizen Kane, but it's also not like a more populist good one or like best movie.
It's like an unpopular choice, but it's like a good choice.
You're right. I think I will stand by that Jean Dielman is an amazing film, but it's also like it does not check anyone. Like nobody's happy because it's neither the.
Okay, actually, I remember the specific movie hole that I fell down recently, which was early this year, which was Charlie Kaufman. Like me and my roommate and another friend of ours just did a marathon of Charlie Kaufman movies over a couple weeks. So depressing, so sad. So funny. Like we were laughing and then we were just so sad. Like it left us feeling like so wrecked. So loveless.
Was just talking about all of those last night and how I've seen a decent amount of them besides like Schenectady.
I love Synecdoche, but oh my god.
Also was just listening to Loveless last night as well. Unrelated, but Sarah, anything or
any holes?
Any holes? Any?
I guess on the movie genre, I think earlier this year I got really into like the Daniels movie.
Oh.
After like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Okay.
That was probably my favorite film of the year, and then I watched the other stuff.
Did you watch Swiss Army Man?
Yeah, I watched Swiss Army Man, which is about like what's it about?
It's a Paul Dano was trapped on an island with a bloated corpse who talks to him.
Oh yeah,
played by Daniel.
Yeah. It's a weird movie.
Did you watch all of their past stuff as well, like their music videos, like leading up to everything? It's really interesting seeing like their development.
I think mostly, just Everything Everywhere All at Once, and then Swiss Army Man.
Also, a little bit of trivia. Our mum was childhood friends with the star of Everything Everywhere All at Once, Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah, back in Malaysia.
Yeah, they went to the same Catholic convent in high school.
What a small little world we all live in.
Only one of them is mother to 2 game developers.
That we know of.
That we know of. Michelle Yeoh's kids could also be very into gaming and game development.
They could be secret game developers. I don't know.
They could be anonymous somewhere.
Right. But speaking of which, we're going to bid farewell to these game developers and soon join other game developers.
Thanks for having us. It was really nice, actually.
Yeah,
Jeremy, Sarah, thank you both for being here. we're going to go on a quick break for roughly, I think it was like 3:01. Oh, I was right. It was 3:01. And then we'll be back after 3 minutes and 1 second, approximately.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.
Hello, and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was... me getting a burp real quick. No, that was not the name. I mean, because I don't doubt that I would play something that would have a name like that. But no, that was actually called He Gets Me High by Dum Dum Girls. We are joined here by our second guest, who you may know in the context of Indiepocalypse Radio, from issue 34 of Indiepocalypse with Sylvie Lime. It is Sylvie. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. I want to let's get out of the way very quickly. The people are always dying to know. How did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
Well, so I don't remember the specifics, but I've been making games for many years, and I've always been more on the side of like weird freeware games rather than commercial indie games.
Yeah.
So I think just that obviously because I'm in that scene, I know a lot of people who post games on Itch and stuff. So I think at some point I just came across it on Itch, and I think I just came across one of the jams on Itch, and it's like, oh, this looks pretty cool.
Yeah, because my commission process often is people coming into my frame of view at the right time.
Yeah, so I remember that you commissioned me after I appeared in the Pledge Drive stream.
Yes.
And, yeah.
It was basically like, right, yes. I was like, I need a commissioned game, and then here's a cool developer putting themselves in my field of view immediately, and I was like, why not give this a try? And that is to pull back the curtain on my very rigid decision making process. Largely, I think is that there's a nigh infinite number of people making very cool and very interesting smaller games, and I love to get as many of them in this as I can. And that's one of the reasons why, despite multiple people being like, "Oh, what if you slowed it down or had less games or this or that?" And I just like having as many people in here as possible. But speaking of all that, tell me about Sylvie Lime.
So Sylvie Lime, it's a exploration platformer where you play as me, Sylvie, and I can turn into a lime. And when I turn into a lime, then I stop being affected by gravity, and I also can't adjust my movement anymore. So it's kind of like you turn into a lime, and you keep your momentum from however you were moving before.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the main mechanic, but then there's also a lot of weird items you can find. There's a chair you can put down and stand on, and that's actually extremely helpful with the platforming in the game, standing on a chair.
It's extremely helpful in my experience for beating bosses as well.
Yeah, I wonder if you might have played the version where the chair was extremely overpowered and you could cheese half the bosses in the game with it. Now you can only sort of cheese the bosses.
Maybe.
But yeah. Anyway, so that's sort of but more at more of a high level. It's sort of the culmination of two things I've been interested in. One of them is Metroidvanias, where the progression is so non-linear and open-ended that it's kind of debatable whether you can call it a Metroidvania anymore, because most of them kind of have like this lock and key formula where you like go to an area and get an item,
Yeah.
and it opens up like one new area somewhere else on the map. But Sylvie Line is like you can basically go anywhere in the world from like the very start of the game, and that's kind of a design direction they've been interested in. And the other thing is this sort of view I have as like game design as like a conversation between designers and players, like not necessarily in a literal sense, but like when you play my games, I want you to be like thinking about the person who made it and why they like made these decisions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so Sylvie Line kind of makes that literal by you can meet characters in the game who are sort of the fictional developers of Sylvie Line, and they talk about like the design decisions they made and like the arguments they had in development and stuff like that. So it's sort of like you can like literally have this conversation
Right.
in a fictional way, while also having it more of sort of like the usual way when you play video games.
Yeah, that hit me at a very because around this time that I had played that, I had also recently I read a book called The Carmen Line. And at the one of the dedications at the end of that is someone saying, reading this is one of those books that makes me feel like I want to understand the person, and I'm seeing a window into someone's life, and I want to kind of like know more about them, or I know more about them through their work than I have in my limited time speaking to them and that sort of thing. And I think there is a lot to the idea of art having conversation with people, and this idea that we don't have to explain what we have because the art is talking.
Yeah, like I think yeah, it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, because like I've seen sort of a few common like threads of that idea in like various things I've seen around this year, and like one of them was actually the Indiepocalypse pledge drive stream when I dropped in on someone playing Atlantis No Naso.
Yes.
And yeah, and the player was the player talked about how one of the players talked about how like they really liked the game because like it kind of had this this antagonistic feel to it. Like it doesn't really it doesn't really expect you to win, kind of.
Yeah.
And like I've had a few conversations with people talking about how like that kind of like antagonism makes you feel like you're more directly relating to the designer of the game. It's just kind of like someone's trying to push my buttons here, as opposed to like a game that plays more smoothly, where you're just like thinking about the game,
Yeah.
and all the person behind it.
Yeah, I've been thinking and talking to someone a lot about the idea of games wanting you to beat them or not, if that makes sense. And it's not a, it kind of is a more recent trend of feeling like games want you to beat them more often than not, and that is the sort of what's it called, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like micro upgrades and stuff, I think are a part of that. Like, having little upgrades that kind of make you better slowly but surely, that you kind of, if you just grind long enough, you'll get there.
Yeah. I think that's interesting too, because like I sort of started thinking about this idea in the context of like I said, antagonistic games.
Yeah.
I read a paper I forget one of the authors is, I think, Miguel Sicart. I forget the other author, but it's about what they called abusive games, and I don't like the term abusive games because how they described it is like how they like it's hard to remember this off the top of my head, but basically they
Yeah.
were describing something that was like basically games that try to create a conversation with the designer. So basically they were describing the kind of games that I like making and that I like playing, and they called it abusive games for some reason. And it was
Right.
like so like I think I wrote something. I wrote like a sort of short essay a while ago, where I like to think about it as like the game designer being vulnerable instead. Like
Yeah.
they're taking these things that they like, but they think other people will be uncomfortable with or not like, and that could be like things like sort of narrative things like personal trauma that you write a story about or something like that. But like it could also be mechanical things like mechanics that people will call like janky or bad or whatever, and
Yeah.
then you sort of try to like you try to put that out there and get people to accept it. So that and like so that's how I like to frame it versus calling it like abusive or antagonistic. That's sort
Right.
of what I'm interested in, or what I try to do a lot with Sylvie Line.
Yeah, because you add a lot of Sylvia Lime also does a lot of interesting things that I was talking to someone about because they were talking about the idea of approaching games more non-linearly, and we were talking how like it's harder to approach it, like to enter a game kind of to revisit a part of a game like you would any other piece of art. It's harder to like show someone one scene in a game, for instance, without like having to, I guess, look up a let's play and know where trying to find the scene perfectly, and then also hoping it's a no commentary one. But like you included a lot of like we'll call them, well, besides just like you can adjust flags here and there, but like gameplay smoothers, we'll call them. um, that kind of
I've been calling them in my games playful options.
yes,
Like some games call them assist options, like Celeste, for example,
yeah,
and some games, of course, call them cheat codes, which I think like I mean maybe that was okay in the 80s, but I think it's kind of judgmental now if you like say if you use this feature you're a cheater.
yeah,
So
right,
I've called them playful options because like the way I view it is like it can be a way to assist people with getting through the game if they're having trouble with that, but it can also be a way just to like mess around with the game and
yeah,
do things that you would normally be able to do. And yeah, that's why like that also ties into like how I sort of started thinking about this because of these really difficult antagonistic games, but it doesn't like I'm all I like it if I put in features that let people like skip around the game and get past parts more easily and stuff, it doesn't really detract from that sense of having a conversation.
right.
So it's not like the antagonism is like a necessary part of it. It's just sort of one direction you can approach it from. You don't have to make your game ultra hard and unbeatable to sort of open up that conversation.
Yeah, and it could just be like a stumbling block someone has with like one particular mechanical thing that they can't do. Like maybe someone is a platforming pro but has difficulty with the bosses. You know.
Exactly. I actually know one person who they play through the whole game with the default settings except for the bosses, which they had just turned on invincibility for because they
Uh,
didn't really like fighting them.
I'm one of those people. I beat the first one like, oh, I am not I am not good at this. But as I've gotten older, I've gotten to recognize like I don't need to be good at games to like engage with them fully, and I can let's say the fact that most older consoles do not have trigger buttons, and that you can say, for instance, map quick save and quick load to trigger buttons. uh, Gives you a better experience of games in terms of like, well, if I played through like Armored Core, for instance, vanilla style, it would probably take me way longer. Would I even beat it? But if I cheat a little here and there, if I, as they say, as they would say it, or if I just save scum, I can kind of experience something in a way that I wouldn't
Yeah,
be able to.
so yeah, when I was younger, like when I was a teenager, I sort of like I sort of thought of myself as like a hardcore gamer.
Yeah.
like and like I would get mad when people are like, oh, I played this old game and I just like use save states to get through it, and like I was like, no, you have to play the game properly. But like, yeah, like I think there are a lot of older games where like if you play with save states, you kind of like basically like erase some part of the mechanics. Like for example, like let's say Super Mario Bros. It
Yeah.
has all these alternate paths and secrets, and if you get secrets, you get more coins, which is you get more lives, which let you, and the more lives you have, the longer farther you can get in the game. And if you save state after every level, then that whole system is kind of just thrown out the window.
Right.
So that's sort of the part of it I still think is sort of valid. But on the other hand, I think like if you don't want to engage with that, you shouldn't have to. It's fine to just use the save states and have fun with the game in your own way.
Yeah, it gives me an
And
opportunity.
that's
To,
or okay, yeah. I guess sorry. I guess you trailed off because I sound like I was going to say something.
uh,
The other thing I was going to mention is that there's this arcade game, The Legend of Valkyrie, and when I initially played it, I was like, "This is a fun game, but I'm way too old to practice this enough to complete it on one quarter." And like I think, like, and similarly to like playing Super Mario Bros. With save states versus playing it without, like a lot of arcade games are a completely different experience if you try to like learn them well enough to clear them without spamming quarters.
yeah.
But I was like, I just don't have the patience for this anymore. But so what I did instead was I started using save states to like explore the later levels and sort of figure out like if I were to learn this game, like what strategies would I need to master? So I sort of explored the game in that way without restarting from the beginning and putting in the new point every time, just like using save states.
Yeah, yeah.
And eventually, after a while, I actually got confident enough with it to actually be able to complete it on one credit. And so it's like without like the save states, I would have just given up and not had that experience.
Right, because it lets you. I found when I do that, I kind of engage with like the minutia of a game in a way that like a difficulty, like if I just died and like went back from it's like a million tiny little practice modes in some cases
Yeah,
where I'm like, oh, okay, so I've like I understand how enemies are operating, and it like it lets me. If I had to play some of these games like regularly, it would take me way more time to play all these games.
yeah. And like I think with arcade games especially, like I think a lot of people when they play through them by just putting in another quarter every time they die, then
Yeah.
they don't experience all those minutia of like trying to learn how to deal with certain enemy patterns, and so the game just becomes kind of flat. Like it's I don't think it's wrong to play it that way, but you kind of miss out on a lot of what the game is about. And maybe and when you do it, when you play it like that, you'll end up playing through it once and saying, "Well, that was kind of okay," and then never playing it again.
Yeah, right. Because you.
And then on the other hand, if you play without any sort of tools or help, like no save states, then you might just give up on like level 2 or something.
Right, because you're like, well, I've reached the second level a million times, and now I have to
Yeah.
keep doing it. but no, I was playing a game just before it's called like Isolated Soldier, which is this isometric sort of like auto-scrolling shooter thing. But it's like, and then but like it gives me opportunities to be like, wow, I like these like enemy attack patterns and this kind of like these boss attack patterns and things I can appreciate if I'm like dying to them and I just constantly restart and look at them again and kind of like begin to understand how they work and how they move around.
Yes. So like I think like having experiences like that has kind of led me to like discard that whole old like hardcore gamer viewpoint of like, no, you're playing the game wrong. And instead be like I sort of started leaning towards more like make games that let people give people like a lot of freedom to decide how they want to play them. And like and then you just sort of hope that people are going to gravitate toward whatever way they enjoy the most.
Yeah, we can, because games are a very weird medium relative to other mediums, where it's kind of the ability to like fully interact with it is like, generally speaking, if you can like watch a movie, like you whether or not you understand it or whether or not you kind of comprehend what it's saying, you can still watch it front to back without without much issue. Like,
Yeah.
it plays whether you're good at it or not, whereas a game does not do that.
Yeah.
It requires that there's that first level of interaction with the art before you get to the second level of interaction with the art, which is, what is it saying? It's like first you have to start. You have to have the dialogue before you can parse the dialogue, and it's a very interesting medium in that way.
Yeah.
But speaking of the mediums of games, I've got a couple of questions for you. Or 3 questions in. Let me just refresh real quick, just to double check. 3 questions in total. This one, contextless to me, makes no sense whatsoever. Hopefully, it's from Enamor, and it says lava snake, and then there's a little carrot face that isn't in that kind of smile configuration.
Wait, what?
Let me.
It says
Well, they're saying lava snake, but they're doing it in that fun way where they misspell.
Oh, lava snake. Yes,
Yes.
yes. So the lava snake in Sylvie Line.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a spoiler for Sylvie Line. But there's a boss, and when you defeat the boss, it plays like a death animation, and the boss starts to slowly fall into the lava.
Yeah.
And then a giant snake pops out and eats the boss you just fought, and then you have to fight the giant snake. And so I made a decision with this boss, which is that when you die to the boss, then you just can't fight it again. It's just gone for the rest of your save file.
Yeah.
And that was partly because the boss is kind of implemented in a weird way, and it was just easier to not have it come back. It's also partly a narrative thing, like basically the boss you were trying to beat is dead now. This giant snake is just hiding out in the lava and doesn't have anything to do with the story. So why should you fight it again? Why should you be able to fight the snake when you've accomplished your actual goal? So I don't know what the question was asking. Maybe just to explain the lava snake and why it has this weird property that you can't fight it again.
I could not elaborate on the question.
Yeah. So I guess the other, well, one thing is that you actually can fight it again without restarting your save, because Sylvie Line, as you mentioned, has a options menu where you can set all the flags in the game. So you can just turn the beat the boss flag off and fight the boss again, and the snake will appear again. So if you want to see what happens when you beat the snake, and I suggest using that method.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. We've got another question here from the same enamorer. This one is longer and a more thorough question, which is, how did the Sylvie Lime title theme, Sublime, come to fruition? Was it a challenging piece to compose, or did it come easily? Do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share about the soundtrack?
Yeah, so the title theme, I think, it was. I feel like it was one of the first things I thought of after coming up with the concept of Sylvie Lime. Like, like I had the song in my head for a very long time before I actually made like the backing track and like sung it, and I would like sing it to myself all the time and stuff, and yeah, then if eventually so I think I wouldn't say it was that hard to compose. I think it's sort of it just like it's like a silly thing I kind of like naturally came up with after I first came up with the idea.
Yeah.
But it did take a long time before I like turned it into an actual track instead of just something in my head.
Well, perfect. And now we've got two questions that you've had time to prepare for this time. Uh,
Yeah.
Rox, do you have a favorite? Soul's got to know.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this. I think it's probably amethyst,
Okay.
which is like a cool purple crystal kind of rock. I looked it up. I looked up pictures of it while the previous segment was going on to confirm that I like it, and it's like, yeah, this is a really good rock.
And finally, Mochi's ever eternal question: Do you have a favorite Toho character?
I think I do. So it's probably Marisa, who is one of the sort of like main two characters.
Yeah.
She's a witch who's kind of like spunky, and her dialogues with the other characters are funny. I have actually played a lot of Toho, unlike many of the guests on this podcast.
We started off as like a really strong Toho contingent. Like people were like, I could tell you all about Toho, and then we entered the Toho Valley, which got me thinking like maybe I should play Toho, and then I started playing Toho, and then I don't know if I have a favorite character, but I will say,
Yeah, so I started playing many years ago, and when I first got into the games, I didn't care about like the story or character side at all. I just
yeah,
wanted to play like some shooter games. But I've started like actually paying more attention to the characters and stories when I play them recently, and like I think I don't have like a super strong like I don't have super strong feelings about them, but they are pretty fun and silly.
yeah, I think that is. It's to wax poetically about Toho for a moment. I think from my limited experience, the appeal of it is that they're simple enough that you can reflect like what you want onto them, and they're easy to expand on. And I think a lot of them also have mostly strong designs.
Yeah, like some of my other favorites are like I don't actually know like I know like next to nothing about what their like canonical personality is, and I just like them because of vibes.
Yeah, that is me with like, is it the what is it, like the Scarlet Castle? Is that what it's called? The Scarlet Manor. That whole
Scarlet Devil Mission.
that whole crew
Um,
I kind of like.
yeah, the embodiment of Scarlet Devil, which is the game with that crew. It's what a lot of people are like. Oh, it's like the first Windows one, so it's kind of janky. But for some reason, it's one of my favorites. I play it a lot, and yeah, I like the crew in that game a lot.
Yeah, I played a little, and then because I'm also a Metroidvania freak, I played that Team Ladybug fan game that they had made.
Oh, I haven't tried that.
If you like Symphony of the Night, they clearly enjoy Symphony of the Night when they made that game and that Lodos War game. But there is I'll say, because our segment is coming to a close, but the one last thing while we're on this train of the way Alucard turns around in Symphony of the Night is very important, and
Oh yeah, I haven't played it in a long time, but he has like a whole like turning animation.
yeah, like the way he kind of slides and then pivots around, like it's in those two Ladybug games, and I realize like how important it is to the feel of the way the movement is in that game.
Yeah.
But anyway, Sylvie, thank you for being on the show, and in the zine and all the general collection of thank yous.
Yeah.
Going.
Thank you for commissioning.
Oh, thank you.
Sylvie line.
Thank you for making it. This is it's always a difficult thing for me to. I love all these games that are in Indiepocalypse, and it's always hard to separate myself from saying that I love them and then not feeling like I'm just like being a marketer. I'm like, no, people, you have to believe me. I do really like these games a lot. But anyway, we'll be back in like a minute 46. Goodbye for now.
People die.
Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Current 93 with Anyway, People Die. That it says 2014. Technically, Thunder Perfect Mind comes out in 92, and I think technically that song is on like a bonus disc in 2003, should Wikipedia be believed. But 2014 is not the correct date for that album. For the people in the chat who were like, I can't believe he says Thunder Perfect Mind came out in 1992. Anyway, we're here with everybody's back in the group chat, coming and hanging out. Hello, everyone. Or everyone minus Jeremy.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
But that was no. Here's the tricky part. Where do I start this? This is Andrew's gambit. Does he remember where to go when he starts up this? Oh, Sylvie, I never asked this question of you, and I think it's a good question to ask. As they were leaving, I asked, did they fall down any media holes, and what is the most recent sort of, if there is one, media hole that you've fallen down into, art hole, if you will?
Yeah, I was thinking about this when you asked the other guest. I had trouble coming up with one because, like, I don't think there's been one recently because when I was making Sylvie Line, I was not really doing much else. So
Yeah.
I wasn't really like, yeah. And then since I finished it, I don't think I've fallen down any media holes. So what I'm going to say is so in I think 2020 I read the visual novel Umi Neko When They Cry, and then after that I read the sort of predecessor to it, Higurashi When They Cry, and the reason I consider this a media hole is because both of those are like 100 hours long.
Yes.
So yeah, and the other reason I consider a media hole is because I got really really obsessed with them, and like I still like to the point where I think I finished. When did I finish Higurashi? I could probably find this if I look at my Twitter. Yeah, I finished it last year, actually, in February, and I still like regularly think about both of those stories, and I think they've like influenced my writing and stuff. So yeah, like that's, even though it consists of two works, I feel like it counts as a media hole.
Yes, those are both very much, or that, I would say that series and Toho were two of my sort of like giant blind spots I considered I had, and then I was like, Toho is not the longest written piece of interactive or longest written piece of fiction ever made. So maybe I'll try Toho first. Is that the one technically? If you put it all together.
It's not the longest, but it's up there. Like I think if if you were to make a list of like the longest written works of English fiction,
Yeah.
and well actually I think there is such a list on Wikipedia of like the longest published novels and in English, and Umineko isn't on there because it's a visual novel, but
Right.
if it was on there, it would be like solidly in the middle of that list. Like not quite the biggest ever, but like bigger than a lot of things. I
Yes.
think it's like around 1 million words.
Which is an awful lot of words to have to read.
Oh, what about it stays in your mind, like even after like a whole year?
Yeah. So for for Umineko and Higurashi, like the things that stay in my mind are kind of different. Maybe then, and there are also a lot of things. So maybe I'll sort of talk about one thing I really like is so Higurashi is a visual novel, but it has almost no interactivity. There's a little bit, but it's not like one of those games where you have like you make choices and you go down different routes and there are different endings. It's largely a completely linear story, and so I like some people call visual novels like that, or sometimes even the ones that do have choices, they say they're not really games. But something I find interesting about Higurashi is that it basically tries to make an argument in the work itself that it is a game, even though the interactivity is pretty much limited to like some kind of gimmicky things in like the final episode or something like that. But and the argument it makes is basically like so the structure, so like even though it doesn't have those choices and routes, the structure of the games is divided into episodes, and each episode sort of begins from the same starting point, but then they diverge in terms of what happens. So even though it's a linear story, it's kind of still framing itself as a visual novel with branching paths. And after each episode, there's like these little fun segments where the characters sort of break the fourth wall and talk about what happened in the story. And the game basically argues that like if you're just sort of passively absorbing this work, then it's not a game. But once you start thinking about the rules of the world and the mysteries that pop up in the chapter, and you start developing your own theories, then it becomes a game. And that's that's sort of one of the things that has really stuck with me about it. Maybe the most relevant in terms of like a game design related podcast. A lot of the other things are like character moments that like I have really stuck with me. That might be the most game design relevant one.
Dang, I better carve out some time to play.
Yeah, that is. It's a lengthy bit of stuff you can get into, but I've never seen someone who's gone through it all and come out the other side who's like, I'm indifferent to it, or what?
So you have to have a strong opinion, or it makes you leave with a strong opinion of it.
Yeah, right. There's like you spend so much time with something, you can't help but think about it, and the I think even for as like people occasionally call them, kinetic novels.
Yeah.
Just like the fact that you have to actively, you are like, I mean, you do have to turn pages in books as well, but it is that you don't have to turn a page every single line, or every paragraph, and I think that creates a different level of interactivity, and like it develops a different relationship to the work than you would something else. It's games are, what is it, are very weird. Oh, look at this. What I'm looking through this these Higurashi pictures, and I see two characters doing it. I forget what they called it, but it was a thing where they put their hands on the top of their head and they like flapped them back and forth. That is.
Oh, is it like caramel dancer?
That sounds. Yes, that's it. You got it. You got it in one.
Whoa! Flashback.
And dating
to the
yourself
past.
immediately.
Yeah. So I guess another thing that really sticks with me about Higurashi that you reminded me of, and Umi Neko is like, I think less of this, but like Higurashi was made by a very small team, and I think it was like mostly the work of like the writer with some other people helping with like programming and stuff. But I think the writer also drew their own sprites.
Yeah.
And the backgrounds are like photographs that were taken by the writer and his brother, I think, and like run through some visual filters to make them look lower quality, basically. So the whole thing has this really strong like amateur production vibe, and I think that was like really inspiring to me, because like it's probably one of my favorite works of fiction, but it also has this strong like vibe of like you could make something like this.
Yeah.
Like it's simple enough that you could create something like this too. And I think that sort of inspired me to like work on games that have more story elements. Like Sylvie Lime is the first game I've made that really has like an involved story instead of just like random NPCs that say silly things.
Yeah.
And Umi Neko, I get less of that feeling because it does still have like the hand drawn sprites and the photo backgrounds and stuff, but the story is so like absurdly intricate and complicated that I'm like, how did a human even come up with this? so it sort of gives me less of a like, hey, you could make a cool story too vibe, because it's like what even is this and how is it so amazing?
It's maybe the secret is writing like 100,000 lines first.
Yeah, you have to write 1 million word long story first before you write a second more complicated one.
Yeah. I mean, that's the secret to art that people forget. I mean, people are talking about it a lot right now, but you get reminded that art is very rarely a talent so much as a thing you just do a lot and get better at. And,
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people are like more predisposed to certain like crafts. Some people are probably better at drawing hands, and you just don't know why. But look at Higurashi. They don't have. There's no hands there, you know.
Oh, the hands are famously terrible, and but so the thing is, they redid the art in like re-releases of the games to have like a more professional anime style, but a large contingent of Higurashi fans, including me, think that the original sprites with the messed up bulbous hands are like not just a little more charming, but like vastly superior to the like redrawn professional anime art.
Right, because it's why I love a person's like distinct style, because it goes from being someone's style to being just kind of anime, or you know, a more house style. And like I love when things are not within like house style, if that makes sense. Which is a term I think most often you've referred to for like Western comics, you know, of like this is what is like a what a traditional Batman looks like or whatever, is like a house style. but I like. Yeah, they kind of just look like anime people, you know. And
Yeah.
no disrespect to anime people, but they look like anime people. But yeah, they're fascinating. Whatever. Now he's writing Silent Hill games, you know.
Yeah.
So you spend long enough, and you work at it long enough, you kind of just you can find that success or that culturally accepted mainstream success, I should say. But I think there's a lot of room for. I envy to some extent the concept of like the Dojin market, you know, that doesn't exist in the U.S. quite the same way, you know. We
Oh,
don't
you
have.
mean like Comic Cat?
Yeah,
Like having that big, yeah.
Yeah, the U.S. doesn't really have like something like Comic Cat really at all. That like is like, which is like primarily I think a comics show, but is more of also like a general indie art show. But we don't, especially like where if you make your small hobbyist sort of personal game, where do you bring it? You know.
We have a few in Melbourne, luckily.
Yeah,
Like very small ones.
Australia seems cool about that in some ways, like that you can also actually get money for games as well.
Oh yeah. There's quite a few like funding initiatives here like recently, which has been good. And then yeah, super small like zine conventions that you can go to. But they're only like a few times a year. But super grateful for that.
I found my best success at a punk flea market. Rather than like a video game convention.
Was it the kind where like everyone has like a desk or like a stall? Oh, nice.
Yeah, we were the first people I've talked to people like, oh look, we all have the same tables basically. We all got that one table, that one foldable table with the strap, and we all because it's the cheap, affordable one. And it's like people are just kind of selling whatever. It is still not the ideal video game market, but it's better. There's I've hit a point where I think it's easier for me, or more beneficial perhaps, to convince non-gamers to try the stuff in this than to convince gamers that they should try the stuff in this, or convince non-gamers to try games rather than convince gamers to try non-games. It's
I get that though. I feel like the people who go to these, I guess, like smaller fairs, they're just a lot more open to trying new things and finding these kinds of games.
Like I feel like I usually have to put kind of more very under the more traditional like video games up on the computer when I go to like when the times that I've attended like game shows, as opposed to
how have you found like attending the game shows?
Not great. This was like last year was like maybe I should just not go to these anymore. It seems like not it's super weird because like going to those it hits super hard with like a couple people. That is like I remember someone coming up and dressed in like what's it called, Yume Nikki cosplay, and then being like, oh, Madotsuki's closet is like made literally for me, and getting very obsessed with it. But also there was also a bunch of people in Mario t-shirts being like, I don't understand these video games.
Yep.
I don't. What's the goal of these games? And that was like pre Indiepocalypse. I was already making games where people were asking what's the goal, and I was like, I don't know. what what do you get out of it? I don't care. There is no goal.
Oh my gosh, when they ask for like the pitch, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to do a pitch.
Right. It's like I don't have like you can't boil it down to a pitch. You just like I don't like doing that, and that's partially the whole origin story of doing this was like I have no illusions that I'm good at making games particularly, but I was getting better, and then also like I don't want to be poor forever. What if there was a way I could also make these and like sell them perhaps?
Mm.
But,
Yeah, actually, recently I saw you wrote up a post about like Indiepocalypse and how it's been doing over the years, and I found that like really interesting little stats.
yes, I like to be very transparent about all that, like, the money of it all, because I think it can be easy to look at it's very hard, or rather, it's very hard to gauge the success level of something on the internet. And I like to be like, no, it's a very cool thing, but it does not make money. But I do like it, but it does not make money. But that's good because it means a lot of other people are also making money. So not a lot, but like $60 is something, you know?
It is something like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, right. It's non-zero.
Yeah, you can buy one AAA game with that.
Yeah, exactly. So I hope someone took the $60 that they get from Indiepocalypse and buy the new God of War, and then be like, I love how sad this dad is, and he has trouble relating to that's the jet. Okay, there we go. Forget about AAA indie. The video games are about, are you a sad dad or you have someone who has trouble relating to your dad? That is the divide.
Oh my gosh.
That is my new official monikers, and not bad. I'll give it but anyway, video games. What are these things about? I don't care for. I like them, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, they are very good.
I think they're fun. Important question. While I've got a captive audience, do either of you have an off the beaten path like NES or Famicom or even Disk System game? I can play them all. I'm a cool adult who knows how to apply translation patches that are like, yeah, this thing rules, and I love it a lot because I've been playing through kind of that whole library. Well, not fully playing through, but like playing through a little, and then like if I like it, I put a little star next to it, and then I will come back to it later.
Sylvie, have you got any?
I feel like I know a bunch of cool NES games. I'm not. It's like I know enough that I don't know which one to recommend.
Right.
I think the first one that came to mind is Milan Secret Castle. Have you played that?
I'm familiar with Milan Secret Castle. I've not gotten that far alphabetically yet. But
yeah, I like that one. I also like keep second guessing myself if the game is like obscure enough to mention.
Never worry. See, never. That's the thing I worry about too. Because when you start diving into that, you just get so far in your own head, you don't know what's obscure anymore.
Yeah, it's like is Legacy of the Wizard obscure? Is Gimmick obscure?
Right. Yes, Gimmick is a perfect example where I think everybody knows Gimmick, but let's be honest, nobody knows what Gimmick is.
Yeah, like Gimmick is, I think, probably one of the greatest video games ever created.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're already aware.
I'm in deep enough that I know what Gimmick is, but I've never. I might have touched Gimmick, but I don't think I've like truly played through all of Gimmick and got into like the feel of it. It feels unreal. It feels like it could not be made. Gimmick feels like a game that somebody made a couple of years ago.
Yeah, like I have actually beaten it and gotten the true ending, which requires you to beat the game without continues, which is it is fairly difficult, but it's not as bad as it sounds because or not only beat the game without continues, but also find 6 secret items in each level.
Yeah.
And it's not as bad as it sounds because each secret item gives you like a huge score bonus that gives you multiple extra lives. So like once you learn where they are, you're like, oh, I suddenly have like way more lives than if I was playing the game.
Yeah. And it's a system that like rewards you to be good at it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
What are some other good NES or Famicom games? I really like the Mysterious Murasame Castle, Nazo no Murasame Joe.
Yes, I believe you.
That's
I saw you say that earlier, maybe
yeah.
even to me, and then I played through it all.
Yeah, that I learned recently. I thought it was a first party Nintendo game, but apparently it was. Wait, maybe this happened in the Indiepocalypse radio
Yes,
stream. I learned that it was made by Human Entertainment.
Yeah,
not by
co-developed
Nintendo.
by them. Yes, I think that was. I was at some point. I was as I do waxing poetically about Human Entertainment.
Yeah, that now I remember that did happen when I was listening to Indiepocalypse radio.
And then you're like, "This game is made by them." I'm like, "Wait, what's this game?" And then I'm like, "Well, how do I upload my Famicom disk system to my computer so that I can properly play them more easily?" How do I upload my BIOSes? And then I figured that out. But yeah, no, and it is interesting. It like contextually, it makes me think about things like, I need to do chronologies, but I'm like, is Zelda 2 an outlier, or is it just like another one of those like side-scrolling adventure games that were actually really common on the NES, or does it spark that trend and that kind of thing? It's interesting playing things within their context as opposed to the benefit of history kind of creating the canon for us. Also, there's like so many things that games are like trying so many different things like all at once that are just like fascinating, and there's like such cool stuff happening in there. I've been trying to think of, and I've been doing this for a while, of like avoiding this idea of like retro in games, because I think it implies too much that games are progressing linearly when they're not really. They're just kind of like,
Oh, I can't stand when people are like have this view of like game design sort of getting better over time, and like in the 80s nobody knew how to make games and they were just making trash, and now
Yeah.
we know that games should have lots of checkpoints, and it's like, no, shut up.
I remember you being like, plenty of these like stories are like better written than like we've been giving them credit for, or like they're like more complexly like written, and there's like people still knew how to write back then. People have been writing stories for a very long time. It's not like
Yeah.
it's not like we suddenly forgot the human tradition of storytelling just because we started making video games. But yeah, it's fascinating, and I've been really getting into them, and I think it's cool stuff. I have. It's also why I like co-host, because it gives me an excuse to kind of write out longer thoughts, get them out of my head, and in front of someone else, so that someone else may be like, I do also see this thought. Somebody else needs to hear these feelings I have about Bubsy too, without. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Bubsy 2?
The multiplayer is really cool in Bubsy 2. Have you ever played it?
I haven't, but I've just seen the memes.
Okay, so in Bubsy 2, there's in Super Mario Galaxy how the like another player can have a Wii remote and kind of collect stars and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So Bubsy 2 is like it's one of those like take turns style things where you take turns as the Bubster, but when you are not playing, you are playing as like a niece or nephew, and there are two modes. They're either feisty or friendly, and in friendly, the items you collect, because there's also like a shop and items in it. It's a very weird game. It's not very good, but it's. I mean, even in the canon of Bubsy, I don't think it's very good. But um, but like in friendly mode, you like collect stuff, and it's like it goes into the active Bubsy's inventory. But in feisty, you take the things and give them to like your Bubsy, and also you can drop banana peels that Bubsy will slip on. And it's a very weird system. It like doesn't exist in any other game that I've seen, but it's fascinating to me. And I don't know why it exists, but it's cool. But
Dang, yeah, I've never heard of like a multiplayer like that.
yeah, it's very like so you just kind of like that's the only way we played it because you would just like go around and try and drop bananas on Bubsy and make him slip and die while you're stealing all his items because you're this invulnerable flying unit or whatever.
So it's like you're meant to make player one lose if you go in that mode.
Right, and then player two, when it's player's two turn at Bubsy, it's their turn to die.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's this weird antagonistic, like it's this antagonistic version of like taking turns on Mario. And it's super weird. It reminds me of if you're familiar with Perfect Dark, the follow-up to GoldenEye at all. It has a mode where it's called counter operative, and it's how it works is it's basically one player plays the standard like player character playing through story missions, and the second player spawns as enemies within that level. Like with that enemy's weapon and that enemy's like greatly decreased health or whatever based on the difficulty setting, and it like fundamentally reshapes the entire game. Like it makes the first level the hardest level in the game and the third level impossible because it's like once like the quality of like suddenly like what if Goombas could hide anywhere? What if like
what if they were suddenly good?
Yes, right, and it's like suddenly like the enemy placements don't make sense anymore, and you're finding weird places in the environment that you could hide because you're like infinitely weaker than the player character because you're just a regular enemy. So you would like we would just like our metagame would like develop over and over and over again of like, well, now I know they're gonna hide there because that's a good hiding spot. So now I'm going to check that spot. So then you have to check a spot. Then you have to find a hiding spot that ambushes the spot that they're checking, and or you just sprint past all like where the second player could be hiding, and there's like it's weird and really cool. And I literally don't think any other game has done anything like that before or since then. Maybe one other. Maybe I think there's a game called Mind Jack that kind of did that, but not quite. But that's it. I'm going to stop rambling about video games anyway.
No, I think that's so cool, and it like makes the game more replayable as well because you really can't expect what the enemies can do.
Right.
So cool.
And you definitely could not play on any mode besides the easiest and anything besides like the first few levels, because it just like so radically changes how the game works. Like all those guns in the game have like a secondary option, and a lot of the secondary options are really weird. Like one of them turns an assault rifle into a proximity mine.
Oh my gosh!
That is like suddenly if you can start laying proximity mines all over the level that the player isn't expecting. Because you can also like you have two items basically, which is a suicide pill and a just whatever weapon that enemy would start with. so that like if the player ran past you or you found yourself in a weird spot, you would die and embody a new enemy within the level. Or, for instance, throw your proximity gun on the floor everywhere and make a little trap and die, and then keep doing that again, and like pre-load a level full of death traps.
Honestly, why haven't they done this more often?
I don't
in other
know.
video
I
games?
think about it all the time.
That does sound like a really amazing game mode.
It's super weird, but also maybe it's hard to. It's probably very hard to do too. And it's like a very specific kind of thing. But anyway, video games, I think they're cool. And people who make video games also think they are cool. And to say that, Sarah, Sylvie, thank you both for being here on the show. Look at this, I'm ending it. What a host I am, probably. before we start creeping up on 2 hours.
Thanks for having us. This has been so fun.
Yeah.
Thank you both for being a part of this little thing that I do, that I am feeling good about. But before we go, this is a podcast, so that means podcast where people, you get to the end, and then the most exciting part is that you find out where you can find other people's stuff. So Sylvie, where can people find your stuff if they're looking for it?
So I have a website that is called sylvie.website that has a lot of it has a lot of my games, and then it links to the Sylvie spreadsheet, which has basically all. And then I'm also on Twitter at SylvieFluff. I haven't moved to other websites yet, but I may do that at some point. And I'm also on itch as sylvie.itch.io.
Perfect.
Which, and my itch doesn't have as many of my games as my website.
Yeah, go to the website. It's the ideal version. Everyone, I love when people have a website, because they don't go. I mean, I guess they do go away, but if they're not so dependent on someone else's thing being maintained forever, or not changing their rules or such and such. It's very easy to make. Like your website, it's text, center text on a screen with links. You don't need anything else, folks. I highly recommend constructing your own website. Sarah, your stuff. Where can we find your work?
Cool. You can find Jeremy and my games at wombok.itch.io, and then we're also on Twitter. I'm Wombok Games, and Jeremy is Jeremy Mystic.
Perfect. And I highly recommend if you purchase. Well, let me start from the top here, which is I'm Andrew. I make Indiepocalypse. It's this thing that this Nexus hub through which all these projects I make up, because I find myself with 10 minutes of spare time in a month sometimes, and I'm like, what if I just started something else? And then I start a radio show or any number of things, and that's all at indiepocalypse.com. Very soon, I'm getting very close to just being able to sell them through my own websites, which will speed up the time it takes me to get money, maybe. Instead of like doing it in like 14 to 21 days or whatever, I can get it in like 1, maybe, which is nice. It avoids that first payout having to go straight to my bank account, which is always a good feeling if it just hits PayPal and I hit that PayPal balance. I'm feeling great. But speaking of PayPal balance, if you want to see that PayPal balance increase and buy a nice issue like 34 or 35, and to treat some of the developers in this show, you could do that. All those games are available on itch at pizzapranks.itch.io. every issue is there. They'll be on sale soon if you're listening to this live. Itch.io sales, and I always put them on sale for the exact same amount of money. So if you're looking to pay $10 for never less than $1 per developer, that's my Andrew's guarantee. But aside from that, if you want to submit a game, and I would really recommend that you submit a game. There are currently 10 games, 10, no, not even 10 games, 10 submits, what's the word I'm looking for? Entrants. And if I have to start year 3 knocking on doors to fill this, I'll do it, but I won't like it. But I can do that. But indiepocalypse.com/submit, /Patreon, /newsletter, /whatever, to find the things that you're looking for. That's it. That's the show. Nothing else to say here that I couldn't just transfer into me saying forever. A final thank you to our guests, the departed, physically departed, Jeremy, Sarah, and Sylvie, who are not physically departed from the space at the moment. Thank you both, and extended thank you to Jeremy for being here.
Thanks for having us, and hope you have a good weekend.
Same. I extend the best wishes of a nice, relaxing weekend to everyone, and then I'm going to close the show. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.